Hi, this is Lori Young, and I'm a matchmaker at SeattleShotgun.com. And I'm here with Kim Solomon, my matchmaker colleague. And we are here today to speak about TMI in dating. So it we have seen a lot of shidduchim fall apart because people share too much too fast. Kim, what have you seen in dating with TMI?
So sometimes people will overshare. Now, on one hand, sharing, information about yourself can be good because it can help build emotional intimacy. But if you're sharing too much too quickly and the other person isn't ready for it, then unfortunately it can cause things to crumble. So you want to be aware of the other person and where they're holding. Are they ready to be hearing this information?
So, I'm first going to talk about the negatives that you shouldn't share. One is you shouldn't share your negatives. You shouldn't share negativity like, oh, I hate people who drive slow, or I hate this, or I hate that, or I don't like this. What you want to do on a date is really show your positive side and what turns you on happily, like what makes you tick, what makes you thrive. But negativity just brings people down. So you really want to concentrate on that. Also, if you've dated previously, and you start talking about people you've dated before, we were talking about this before the video. What have you seen with people talking too much about previous dates?
So sometimes people will talk about people that they dated and the unpleasant experiences they had. So be careful with that. Firstly, because of Lashon Hara, but even if you don't say that person's name, there's a couple of reasons why you still don't want to say bad things about someone you dated, even if you keep them anonymous. Number one, Lori, like you just said, we want to encourage you to give off positive energy because if you give off positive energy, that will make it so the other person enjoys speaking to you. Your energy is contagious. So if you're happy and upbeat, then the other person will catch that energy and feel happy and upbeat in their presence. The same way that if someone around you is calm, they will have a calming effect on you. So if you are sharing negative information, even if the person's anonymous, that negativity, it's gonna affect the mood and energy of the conversation you're having with them. Another reason why you don't want to say negative things about somebody is that even if they're anonymous and it's not a Lashon Hara issue, is because that person might wonder what you're going to say about them if the
Right.
shidduch doesn't work out, and they might be afraid to disclose anything to you.
Right. And let's talk about divorces, but not on the first date. So people, when they are divorced, sometimes the woman or the man will ask, why did you get divorced? Guess what? That doesn't belong as first date material. It really doesn't. I heard once a classic answer from a guy in his 40s who had a beautiful line. He says, why would I want to talk about my divorce when I have this beautiful young lady in front of me that I want to get to know? So I think that's a great line. Like, yes, you want to get to know the person in front of you. And I don't think you should discuss divorces till you have an emotional connection, at least till the third date, fourth date. And I know some people want to know, but it's not really their business yet. You don't have to talk about your divorce. Blame it on your dating coach. Say, my dating coach said, or I heard that we really shouldn't talk about previous divorce on the first date and stick to it. It's really not their business. Um, and when you do speak about the divorce, um, a great question to ask someone is, what did you learn about yourself from the divorce? I'll tell you why that's a great question. Because if the people take some responsibility from the divorce, for the divorce, and how they could have done better, what they might have done better, what they learned, how they grew, then you're working with somebody who grew from their divorce. But if the person says, oh, it was all her fault, it was all his fault, he abused me, he did this, he did that, she was always yelling at me, whatever it is, if it was all the other person's fault, You really have to ask yourself some questions. If this person didn't grow from their divorce, they may indeed make the same mistakes again. What do you think, Kim?
So you said some really valuable points. One thing you mentioned is that if someone does ask someone why that person got divorced, and they don't want to, completely skirt that question, they can say something like, let me share with you something positive that was learned from that experience. The other thing I want to mention that you brought up, you kind of talked about how you don't want to grill and interrogate a person. So what some people do, and I understand why this is done. Some people, they want to be efficient with their time. So because they want to be efficient with their time, they want to quickly ascertain if the person they're talking to is truly a potential match for them or not. So what they start doing is they go into gathering information mode, where they just start asking questions, sometimes personal questions, because they're trying to make a quick decision. So even though that is totally understandable and it is a great way for you to gather information, the other person might say no to you because they felt uncomfortable with all the interrogation. They want it to be pleasant, enjoyable, the conversation. So, in fact, one of the biggest factors in my experience in why people give a second date, a phone date, a Zoom date, or in-person date is on a very Pashut level. Did they enjoy the conversation with you? Was this pleasant, enjoyable? So you want that person walking away thinking, oh, that was a fresh breath air. That was pleasant. That was enjoyable. What a fun person to speak to. How enjoyable. So just be careful not to ask too many questions. Now, if you do want to find something out about someone, I'll give you a couple of techniques of what you can do to not put the other person on the spot. Number one, as you probably assumed you can do, you can call references and ask those awkward questions that you wouldn't feel comfortable asking to the person. And I think if you're trying to find out something that's not an awkward or personal thing, I actually think it's better if you ask that person themselves. Like if you want to find out if they're open to relocating, do they like pets, will they make Aliyah? But if it's a question that's a sensitive personal question, it might be better to ask a reference, especially early on. If you don't want to ask a reference and you want to try to find out sensitive information, what you can do is first share sensitive information about yourself and then see if that will make the person feel comfortable to also share. If they don't share, then move on and wait till a later time to ask them. But by you sharing something private or personal about yourself, it shows them that you're ready to take things to the next level and that you're comfortable sharing your own information that could be private. What do you think, Lori?
I think that makes sense. I'm going to quote Aliza Ben Shalom here. She says you can only go as fast as the slowest person in a relationship.
Yes.
So I just had someone who had 2 dates and the woman called it off because the guy was going way too fast. So he wanted to share everything about his life instead of just like, let's have a good time. The first couple dates, okay, the first date is just to see if you want a second date. Just let's have a good time. Let's laugh a little. You don't have to play 20 questions. Kim, one of our Zoom dating event couples, the woman just was being efficient. She was a doctor. She was just grilling him to see if he
Getting
checked the
down to
box,
business.
to see if she'd want to date him. And he felt very uncomfortable. He said, I felt like I was at a job interview. A date should not be a job interview. So I know I'm kind of switching gears here, but you can only go as fast as the slowest person. But take it slow. The first 2 dates. The first date is to see if you can enjoy the person, and you want to have that date, the second follow-up date, fairly soon, so it's not a first date over again. But take it slow. The first 2 dates, relax, have fun, and then start playing 20 questions.
Lori, one thing I want to add is I think one of the reasons people do share a lot about themselves is that when you're on a phone date or a Zoom date or an in-person date, you have, 2-3 hours that you got to spend talking about something. So what some people end up doing is they talk about what feels good for them to like just kind of flush out. So if they kind of want to vent and like share their pain because it's therapeutic to them. So that's why they start sharing all this information. And it could be that it is therapeutic to them, but the other person might not want to be their therapist, especially that early on in the relationship.
I just heard that about a 23-year-old gal who's been dating, and she feels sometimes like she is the guy's therapist on the first and second date. And that was that's I think people sharing too much information. Yes, you need to share about your family. But if you have a terrible relationship with your family, it might not be first date material. Just might not be.
Right. Sometimes I think one of the reasons people bring up these things is they're trying to ascertain if the other person can give them emotional support. And that is an important thing to try to find out. Can this person validate you? Can they give you emotional support? So we're not saying that you shouldn't ever, share, emotionally, try to build emotional intimacy, but be careful about doing it so quickly. The first few dates is, think to yourself, Shabbos conversation material.
I like that. Like Shabbos table material.
Or just what you would say to a person if you're meeting them at a kiddush. You keep it light,
Okay.
small talk. The conversation isn't too heavy. Now, what I will say is if you want to move quickly and you see the other person is also sharing a lot, then you could kind of mirror them back. Because like you said, Lori, when you were quoting Eliza as saying you don't want to move any, you can only move as quickly as the person who is, moving kind of slower is comfortable moving. But if you find the other person wants to, get emotionally intimate quickly and you're comfortable doing so, then by all means, feel free to be emotionally intimate. But you want to read your audience and make sure that they're ready for that.
Perfect. Perfect. Like I had a couple that got engaged from our Zoom dating event. They had actually signed up for the Zoom dating event. I matched them before the event, and they had a 3-hour phone call, and they decided not to come to the Zoom dating event. And they had another 3-hour phone call. Then they had a 5-hour date. Like these people just wanted to move, and they got engaged in about 2 months and married a month later. And they wanted to move because they were just so excited to talk to each other. So I agree, Kim. We're giving guidelines, we're giving ideas. So if you are a person who keeps getting 2 dates and no more than 2 dates, you may be a person that's moving too fast and sharing too much.
Right, right.
Okay, are we
Such
done?
an important topic. Anything else you want to share?
I'm done. I think if we make it too long, people aren't going to listen. So
Good point.
bye bye. Thanks for listening.
Bye.